I shouldn't have said it out loud. But when her eyes flicked up at me, sharp and uncertain, the words had already slipped from my mouth. "You're too close," she whispered. And yet, I leaned against the wooden frame of her front door, arms braced just wide enough to keep me from stepping away. "You're not moving." It began with something simple. Her kitchen sink had been leaking for days. One of those slow, patient drips that got under your skin the longer you heard it. I wasn't a plumber, just the kid from next door who'd happened to be around when she was struggling with the groceries and muttering about calling someone to fix it. "Let me take a look," I'd said, maybe a little too quickly. She gave me that sideways glance, the kind women give when they've already decided you're too young to know anything. But she let me in. The kitchen light was dim, one bulb flickering slightly above us. I crouched under the sink, tools scattered on the floor, the cool edge of the cabinet pressing against my back. She hovered nearby, arms crossed, a glass of wine in her hand like she needed something to do with it. "You sure you know what you're doing?" she asked, voice low but edged with doubt. I tightened a valve, wiped my palms on my jeans, and forced a smile. "Not entirely, but it's better than waiting 3 days for a plumber." Her laugh was quiet, half amusement, half something softer. I wanted to hear it again. The work itself didn't matter. What mattered was how she leaned closer each time she checked what I was doing. How her perfume drifted into that cramped space, subtle and warm, like it had been waiting in the air just for me. My chest felt too tight, my hands clumsier than usual, not because of the wrench but because she was standing right there. When I stood to test the faucet, my shoulder brushed hers. She didn't step back. She should have. Instead, she looked at me with that guarded expression. Her lips pressed together like she was holding in words she didn't want me to hear. That's when she said it. "You're too close." It should have ended there. I should have laughed it off, made some excuse about needing space, and walked out of her kitchen. But something in the way she didn't move, how her eyes stayed locked on mine, how her fingers tightened around the wine glass, told me she wasn't entirely sure she wanted me to go. So I asked the question I shouldn't have. "Then why aren't you moving away?" Her breath caught. It wasn't a dramatic sound, just the faintest shift in the air between us. But it hit me harder than any answer she could have given. "I shouldn't be doing this," she murmured finally, barely audible. Her eyes flicked down, away from mine, as if she was ashamed of even standing this close. "Neither should I said, the words heavier than I expected. The silence that followed was sharp, almost unbearable. The drip of the sink had stopped, but the kitchen felt louder than ever. My hand brushed against hers. Accidentally, I told myself, but I didn't pull back. She froze, her wine glass trembling just slightly in her grip. I could feel her deciding something, right there in that breathless space between us. And then she looked at me, really looked, like she was seeing me for the first time, and it scared her. That was when I knew. This wasn't just about a broken sink. It was about the line we were both pretending we hadn't already crossed. I told myself I'd leave after fixing the sink. That was the deal, the safe line to walk. But she leaned against the counter, arms folded, like she wasn't quite finished with me yet. "You always just show up like this?" she asked. Her voice carried a teasing edge, but I could hear the undercurrent. Something heavier, something testing. I shrugged, wiping my hands on a dish towel I'd found. "Only when there's a plumbing emergency." She smiled faintly, but it didn't last. Her eyes drifted toward the window, the glass catching the dim orange glow of the streetlight outside. "My ex-husband used to say he'd fix it, that leak, but he never did. Guess it's been waiting for someone else." I froze, towel balled in my fist. She said it casually, like she wanted it to slip past unnoticed, but it sat between us anyway. Uncomfortable, too intimate. I shouldn't have asked, but I did. "How long?" She hesitated. 6 months. Her lips pressed together, like she regretted saying even that. Something about the way she avoided my eyes made my chest ache. I noticed the smallest things. how the line of her shoulders tightened when she spoke of him, how she turned her glass slowly on the counter like she needed something to fidget with. She wasn't the confident woman I'd imagined from across the fence or in passing hellos. She was fragile in ways she probably hated me seeing. Dangerous, I thought, not just because of the age between us or the fact that she was my neighbor. Dangerous because she was hurting and I was here, young, stupid enough to want to be the one she leaned on. "You shouldn't have told me that," I said softly, more to myself than her. She tilted her head. "Why?" "Because now I won't stop thinking about it." Her laugh came short, uneasy. She set the wine glass down, her hand brushing the counter longer than it needed to. "You make everything sound heavier than it is." But I could see it in her eyes. She wanted someone to carry the weight with her. I noticed then the faint line of tiredness beneath her eyes, the way she inhaled slowly before she spoke again, like she was buying time. "You're different," she said suddenly. It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't even clear what she meant. But it left me restless, caught between wanting to ask and knowing I shouldn't. Instead, I took a step toward the door, just enough to feel the air cool on my back. Maybe I should go. She didn't move, didn't argue, just stood there in that too-quiet kitchen, staring at me like I'd taken something with me when I said it. And then, barely above a whisper, "Stay a little longer." Her hand touched my arm light, but it burned straight through me. I turned, caught in the weight of her gaze, and every excuse I'd rehearsed dissolved on my tongue. I almost said it then, the thing I wasn't supposed to, that I wanted her, that I'd been watching her longer than I should have. But the words stayed, trembling on the edge of my mouth, as her fingers lingered against my skin. I should have pulled away when her hand touched my arm. Instead, I froze, every nerve leaning toward her without permission. "You don't have to stay," she whispered, though her fingers lingered, betraying her own words. "I know," I said. My voice came rougher than I meant, like it was dragged out of somewhere deeper. For a moment, the silence between us was too heavy. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the kitchen clock, even the uneven rhythm of her breath. She looked at me like she was waiting for me to confess something neither of us had asked for. And I almost did. My hand twitched, wanting to cover hers, but I forced it back to my side. This was wrong. Neighbors didn't look at each other this way. Friends didn't stand this close, holding on to moments that stretched too long. "You're staring," she said finally. I swallowed. "So are you." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she stepped past me, brushing against my shoulder. The faintest graze, yet it left my pulse hammering. She poured herself another splash of wine, though I noticed her hand tremble as she set the bottle down. It should have broken the spell. But then her phone buzzed on the counter. The name lit the screen. "Mom." She ignored it, pressing the phone face down with a quick, sharp motion. "She calls too much," she muttered. But her tone wasn't casual. It was strained, almost defensive. Something in me wanted to ask why she didn't answer, why her voice carried that tired edge. But I knew better. Some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed again. "You okay?" I asked instead. She nodded too quickly. "Fine. Just don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you see more than you should." The words hit harder than I expected. Because she was right. I did see more. The loneliness she tried to drown in wine. The half-unbuttoned defenses she didn't even realize she let slip when she sighed. And God help me, I wanted more of it. I should have left. Instead, I leaned against the counter beside her, close enough that our arms almost brushed. "Maybe I can't help it." Her laugh was short, nervous. She turned her face toward me, eyes flicking down to my mouth before darting away. The knock came then, sharp. 3 raps against her front door. We both jumped. She nearly spilled her wine. My body stiffened, instinct pulling me back just far enough to make the distance real again. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Don't move. Footsteps outside. Another knock. She didn't answer it. Didn't explain. Just stood there, too still, her hand brushing against mine on the counter as if to anchor herself. I glanced at her, words pushing up my throat, reckless and unformed. If I said what I was thinking right now, I started. She turned to me, eyes wide, waiting, and I bit the words back. Barely. The knock finally faded into silence. Whoever it was, they left. But the damage was already done. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. She hadn't moved her hand from mine. Her fingers were warm, trembling just enough for me to notice. You should go, she said softly. But she didn't let go. I studied her face in the half-light of the kitchen. She wasn't hiding now. Not behind her sharp humor, not behind that practiced calm. She looked tired, raw, like I'd caught her without armor for the first time. Do you want me to? I asked. Her throat worked as she swallowed. I don't know. It wasn't the answer I expected, but it was honest. Too honest. The silence stretched. My heart pounded in my ears. I wanted to close the distance, to let my body say what I couldn't, but I forced myself to stay rooted. Finally, she pulled her hand back and pressed it against her forehead, exhaling hard. God, this is wrong. You're too young and I'm lonely. I cut in before I could stop myself. Her eyes snapped to mine, startled. I regretted it instantly, but I couldn't take it back. That's not fair, she whispered. I know, I said, but it's true. She turned away, shoulders stiff. You don't understand what this would mean for me. For both of us. I stepped closer, not touching her, just enough so she'd feel it. Then explain it. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw it, the flicker of something she didn't want to name. Not just fear, not just shame. Want. I can't, she said at last. Her voice cracked, the faintest fracture through her control. I reached out, fingers grazing the counter beside her hip, almost touching but not quite. Then don't explain. Just tell me to leave and I will. Her breath hitched. The pause was unbearable. I thought she'd finally say it, that she'd put the wall back between us for good. Instead, she turned, eyes meeting mine with a desperation that stunned me. Why do you make it so hard? I swallowed. Because I can't pretend I don't feel it. The words hung in the air, reckless and irreversible. Her lips parted, but no sound came. We stood locked in that moment, close enough that I could see the tremor in her lashes, the way her chest rose and fell faster than before. If I leaned in, just an inch, everything would change. She seemed to realize it too. Her hand lifted, hovered near my chest, then stopped, fingers curling back like she couldn't trust herself. The clock ticked loudly on the wall. The world outside was silent. Inside, everything teetered on the edge. And then she asked, voice breaking in the stillness, "Do you really want me? Or do you just want the idea of me?" Her question, whether I wanted her or just the idea of her, hung in the air like a blade. I didn't answer. Maybe because I didn't know how, or maybe because I was too afraid of what she'd hear if I tried. She turned away, running a hand through her hair, exhaling sharp. "See? You don't even know. That's not fair," I said. My voice came out harder than I meant, but I didn't back down. "I know what I see when I look at you." She froze, didn't turn, just waited. So I kept going, reckless now. "I see someone strong. Someone who deserved better than a man who left a broken sink dripping for months. Someone who—" "Stop!" Her voice cracked. "Don't make me into some saint you can save. You don't know me. That should have ended it." But then she spun back to face me, eyes wet, and the words tumbled out before she could stop them. "You remind me of him." The room went still. I frowned. "Who?" "My brother," she whispered. "When he was your age. Before the accident." Her hand covered her mouth, like she hadn't meant to say it, like the truth had slipped out against her will. I felt my chest tighten, everything shifting under me. Suddenly, it wasn't just about forbidden attraction or loneliness, it was about grief. About how she saw me, not as some reckless kid pushing boundaries, but as a ghost of someone she'd lost. "That's why," she said, her voice breaking. "That's why I let you in. Why I don't tell you to leave even though I should." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I wasn't a replacement, that what I felt wasn't just her filling a void. But another part of me understood. Maybe too much. "You're not him," I said quietly. "I know," she whispered. "But sometimes, it feels like he's still here when you're around. And that terrifies me." The silence after that was unbearable. My mind spun, torn between the ache in her confession and the selfish relief that at least now I understood why she hadn't pushed me away. I stepped closer, careful, like approaching something fragile. "Then let me be me. Not him. Not anyone else." Her eyes lifted to mine, red-rimmed, raw. She looked at me like she wanted to believe it, but didn't know if she could. The phone buzzed again on the counter. This time, a different name lit up the screen. Her ex. The sound made her flinch. She grabbed the phone, stared at it, then set it down without answering. Her voice came out low, shaking. "If he finds out you're here..." She cut herself off too late. I caught the slip, every nerve on edge. "He still comes around?" She didn't answer, but the silence told me enough. Her phone screen still glowed on the counter, his name lingering like a shadow neither of us wanted to face. She turned it over, pressing it down as if she could bury the whole problem beneath her hand. "You should leave," she said, but her voice wasn't steady, cracked on the last word. I stepped closer, careful but unwilling to back down. "Is that what you want? Or what you think you're supposed to want?" Her eyes flicked up at me, wide, uncertain. "Don't make this harder. You already have." My chest was tight, every word dragging something out of me I hadn't planned to share. "Because I can't walk out of here and pretend none of this happened. Not after what you've said. Not after how you've looked at me." She shut her eyes, shaking her head like she wanted to block me out. "You don't get it. He still has a hold on me, on this house, on my life. If he finds out, then let him," I said, sharper than I intended. "You don't owe him anything anymore." Her silence cut through me. I softened, lowering my voice. "You told me I remind you of your brother. Fine. Maybe that's how it started. But that's not what this is now. Not for me. And I don't think for you either." Her hand trembled as she reached for the wine glass again, then stopped halfway. Instead, she pressed her palm against the counter, steadying herself. "You're too young to know what this costs." I leaned in, close enough that she had to meet my eyes. "Then teach me. Show me. Just don't lie and say you don't feel it." For the first time, she didn't argue. She didn't move, didn't deflect. She just let the silence hold us there, breathing the same air, suspended on the edge. And then, finally, she whispered, "I don't want to be alone anymore." It wasn't a grand confession. It was broken, raw, barely holding together. But it was truer than anything she'd said all night. I reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. The tension unraveled, not into something simple, but into something inevitable. Her grip tightened like she'd been waiting too long for someone to hold on to. "I don't know where this goes," she said, her voice trembling. "Neither do I admitted. "But I know where it starts." Her lips parted, breath unsteady, and for a moment the world outside didn't matter. The knocks, the phone calls, the past still clinging at her edges. What mattered was the way she finally leaned into me, not with certainty, but with surrender. Her forehead rested against mine, her breath mingling with mine in the quiet. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was enough to say what words couldn't. I don't know how long we stood like that. Minutes, Hours. Time didn't feel real anymore. Not in that kitchen. Not with the weight of everything pressing down on us. Finally, she pulled back just enough to see me. Her eyes were red, but there was a softness there now. Something that hadn't been before. Not regret. Not fear. Something closer to surrender. "This can't be simple," she said. "It doesn't have to be," I replied. "It just has to be real." She laughed once, short and shaky, wiping at her cheek with the back of her hand. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," I admitted. "But staying silent, pretending none of this matters, that would be worse." Her gaze lingered on me, as if she was weighing everything. The past she'd carried, the grief she'd revealed, the shadows of her ex still clawing at the edges of her life. And then there was me, the neighbor too young to know better, too stubborn to walk away. "I was afraid," she said finally. "Afraid you only saw what was missing in me. But you stayed. Even when I pushed you, even when I told you to go, you stayed." I swallowed hard. "Because you deserve someone who does." The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was grounding, like something had shifted between us. She reached for my hand again, and this time it wasn't trembling. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to. The decision was already made, not in some grand gesture, but in the simple act of holding on when it would have been easier to let go. When I finally left her house, the street was quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you notice the sound of your own footsteps. I glanced back once, saw her standing at the window watching me, not like a secret, not like a mistake, but like something beginning. And I knew whatever came next, it wouldn't be about pretending. It would be about facing it together, complicated as it was. Reflection that night taught me something I didn't expect, that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't crossing the line. It's denying the line even exists. We both carried weight, her regret, my longing, and somewhere in the collision of those truths, we found something worth holding on to. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. But it was real. And sometimes real is enough.